The Rise of Skywalker is the final chapter in a story that has taken 9 chapters and 42 years to tell. After seeing the film, I said in my spoiler-free review that I was satisfied after seeing the movie, but some Star Wars fans were disappointed, and they even felt betrayed by the way the Skywalker saga ended. In this video, I want to give my full review of The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm not sure if this is actually a full review or if it is a reflection on the movie after having a chance to allow my thoughts to simmer. Either way, I'm going to share my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So stay tuned. What's up, Star Wars fans? My name is Prince and I'm an urban acolyte. Hey guys, big spoiler warning if you haven't already seen Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, because this is going to be my full review of the movie, or at least a full discussion. Also, if you're new here, hey, I talk about Star Wars on this channel, but I do things a little bit different from other Star Wars channels. I dig into the deeper themes in Star Wars, and I share my opinion based on my background study in Eastern religions and Chinese martial arts. The best way to describe it is if you were to sit down and talk about Star Wars with someone training to become like a Jedi in the real world. So if you can dig what I'm doing here, then hey, make sure you subscribe so you can join the Urban Acolyte community. Okay, so if you guys caught my spoiler-free review that I posted after seeing the movie, I said that I felt satisfied when I left the movie theater. I had to be cryptic with that description because, well, I didn't want to spoil anything about the movie for all of you guys over there in the US. I had enough time over here to see the movie at least 3 times before most of y'all were even going to leave for the movie theater. So I felt satisfied because from day one, I focused on the journey and the development of my main man, Finn. Anyone who has been here since I first started posting videos about Star Wars, well, you probably came because of my Finn videos. And hey, I'm gonna go so far as to say that if you've seen any other videos about Finn possibly being Force sensitive, they probably at some point copied something from one of my older videos. So after 4 years of saying, hey y'all, Finn is Force sensitive, I think Finn will become a Jedi, I felt very satisfied with this movie when Finn blatantly said that he has the Force. And if you didn't catch it, it was the thing that Finn wanted to tell Rey throughout the entire movie. When Poe Dameron asked Finn what was going on with him and Rey, Finn said it was something that only he and Leia could understand. And that goes back to a question that some of you guys asked me heading into The Last Jedi, and that was about if Finn would be the Leia of this trilogy. He is. So hey, we got it, y'all. Y'all say I don't show any appreciation? Well, hey, I want to thank each and every one of y'all that stuck with me since 2015 or at any point in between. So thanks to y'all who didn't give up hope or get angry and swear off Star Wars after The Last Jedi. I told you, there's too much going on with the story. If Finn is Force sensitive, we just need a quick nod and then give him his own story after the trilogy wraps up. And we are getting that. A book about Finn from Jason Fry, who has written a number of Star Wars books, like the novelization for The Last Jedi, and the series of books about Zare Leonis that just happened to cross over with season 1 of Star Wars Rebels. But hey, I don't want this review for The Rise of Skywalker to be completely about Finn. I have to do a separate video from my main man, but hey, this is a Finn fan channel. So if you don't like Finn, oh well, that's my guy. But no, let me rephrase that line. That's our guy. Y'all know who you are out there when I say our. But okay, getting into the movie, I'm having trouble keeping my thoughts contained. Normally I've seen the movie at least twice before I write a review, but I've only seen The Rise of Skywalker once. I really like the movie, but you guys know I'm not in the States. I had to take a trip to Malaysia right after I posted my spoiler-free review, and I didn't want to drag my wife back to see the movie again because she's not really into Star Wars, and English is not her first language, and she's sitting over there. I don't want her to Tony Jaa kick me for talking about her right now. But if you guys have any really deep questions that I don't address in this video, hey, drop them in the comments. I may be able to post a video on them later, but if I can't, well, we'll have to wait until the novelization and the DVD come out in a few months. and I've already pre-ordered both of them. So get into the things that I really liked about this movie. I love to see the progression of Rey's character. People complained about how she's had no training or very little training for 2 movies in the last 4 years. But here we see Rey is doing nothing but training, and she's actually not succeeding at it. Rey has a good handle on the physical stuff of being a Jedi, doing flips and fighting with her lightsaber, but these are the things that she's been doing for years on Jakku. The part where she needed to quiet her mind and connect with the Force, that's where she struggles. Now, at the beginning of the movie, Leia mentioned something to Rey about being able to connect with past Jedi. And it kind of sounded like something from the Avatar series where Korra needs to connect with her past lives as previous avatars to get the help with whatever problem she's facing during that particular season. And you know, by the end, Korra loses the connection to her past lives, and she's basically left to forge her own path and establish a new tradition as the current avatar. Now, this is really similar to Rey's journey. And this is something that I've been speaking about for years as part of the hero's journey. Rey's journey has to end with her becoming the boon giver and then a return to the mundane world. And I don't want to go too far with this because I want to end on that point. So put this thought to the side for a moment, but don't push it too far. I want you to keep it close because we're going to come back to that after I cover everything else that I want to share with you guys. Now, this whole thing about how Rey's journey ends, it is really a response to the things that happened in The Last Jedi that were also set up by what happened in The Force Awakens. Now, in The Force Awakens, we were introduced to Rey, Finn, Poe Dameron, and Kylo Ren. Things changed in a very big way when Rey found Anakin's lightsaber and triggered the Force back vision. She saw things related to how that lightsaber ended up in Maz's possession, the fall of Luke's new Jedi Order, the rise of Kylo Ren, and how she ended up on Jakku, and also the meeting she would have with Kylo Ren, who she would discover was connected to her generations before either of them would be born. Now, The Last Jedi really focused on the relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren, and once again, the wise old mentor would serve as a type of fulcrum for these two characters. Now, in The Force Awakens, the fulcrum was Han Solo, who would be a surrogate father for Rey and the biological father of Ben Solo, or Kylo Ren. Now, in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker serves as the fulcrum. He's the uncle of Ben Solo, and in many ways, kind of a father figure. He's Ben's master. And when Rey comes to Ahch-To seeking to return Luke to the Resistance, Luke unwillingly becomes Rey's master. Now, where Han Solo introduced Rey to the Force, Luke fully indoctrinates Rey into the ways of the Force. Joseph Campbell would call this teaching her the mysteries, or passing on the boon that the hero must now learn to master. This brings us to the Rise of Skywalker. Now, in the Rise of Skywalker, it is actually Leia who acts as the fulcrum. The mother of Ben Solo and the new master of Rey, Leia is interesting because she has a strong connection to both Ben and Rey through the Force. She's the only person capable of reaching Ben, and she openly accepted Rey at their first meeting on Dakar through their connection through the Force. Rey is the last person who saw both Han and Luke before they died, and so Rey serves as a connection to her husband and her brother for Leia. Now, I don't want you guys to get confused with my use of the term fulcrum. I'm just talking about the thing that keeps something balanced. I'm not referring to Ahsoka's handle at all. The only way Ahsoka is related at all to what I'm talking about is that she was saved by the daughter on Mortis. The Mortis arc is what I'm really trying to get you all to think about. The fulcrum that I mentioned in each movie, Han, Luke, and Leia, they are like the father on Mortis, who is the balance between the daughter and the son, the light and the dark. Now, if you think about it, this sequel trilogy is an extension of the Mortis arc from the Clone Wars. Anakin Skywalker was supposed to take the father's place on Mortis as a chosen one. He had the power to keep both the son and the daughter from unbalancing the cosmic force and destroying all life in the galaxy. Anakin refused to take the father's place, and his decision resulted in the deaths of all the Mortis Force gods. Anakin would have to make this choice again to stop the darkness from spreading when he sacrificed his own life in order to save his son Luke Skywalker. Now, the sequel trilogy took this Mortis story and added an interesting aspect to it. What if the grandson of Vader and the granddaughter of Palpatine were born with a strong connection through the Force? To up the ante or up the stakes, we learn there is a prophecy that says she who will be born in darkness will give birth to darkness, implying that Ben Solo was always going to turn to the dark side, and his dyad partner, Rey, would be the descendant of Palpatine. So think about this. Ben comes from the light, but chooses the dark throughout the majority of the story, and Rey comes from the dark, but ultimately chooses the light, although she struggles with the dark side at times, especially in the final chapter of the story. Now, I'm spending so much time building up the relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren because that is the focus of the final part of the Skywalker saga. This is dealing with the fallout from the previous 6 chapters. The first 3 chapters deal with the events caused by Sheev Palpatine, or his true name by this time in his life, Darth Sidious, as he manipulates galactic politics that will lead to the eventual destruction of the Jedi Order as part of the Sith's revenge for the events that happened in the Scourge of Malachor, when a group of Jedi Crusaders were responsible for the deaths of many Sith and Jedi. The next 3 movies deal with the Rebel Alliance leading the fight to oust the Empire, but during this time, Palpatine, as Emperor, has spent his time delving into arcane secrets of the dark side in order to achieve the goal that every Sith has, to become physically immortal. Right now, it's unclear how Palpatine planned to achieve this goal. On the one hand, Darth Sidious and his master, Darth Plagueis, learned that a certain ritual would unleash the full power of the dark side, but it had to be performed in the Sith Shrine under the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, which was the royal palace during the Empire's time. And on the other hand, Sidious was obsessed with learning more about the unknown regions, as he believed the source of the dark side came from somewhere in the unknown regions. So he began to send exploration teams into the unknown regions, even as far back as the Old Republic times before the Clone Wars began. So this is the story of the Skywalker saga. Darth Sidious' actions to bring about the collapse of the Jedi and his quest to rule the galaxy brought about the appearance of the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker. To be sure that he ensured his victory, Sidious turned Anakin to the dark side, making him his apprentice. Anakin's wife, Padme, before losing the will to live, gave birth to the Skywalker twins, Luke and Leia, who would both play their respective parts in leading the Rebel Alliance to victory. In the time following the events in the first 6 movies, Han and Leia have a son, Ben Solo, who was born just after a group of the Empire's remaining fleets flee to the unknown regions to form the First Order under Grand Admiral Ray Sloane. This was a result of part of Palpatine's contingency plan, but not his true contingency. Apparently, during this time, unknown to everyone in the galaxy, Palpatine's true contingency plan was taking shape. A new fleet was coming together on a lost Sith world, Exegol. And just as Palpatine's advisor, Yup Tashu, once said, this new empire would be born completely from the dark side. It would be formed by people who followed the Sith religion, but were not actually Sith themselves. Now, it is unclear at this time, but it appears that at some point, the Sith cultists were actually manipulating everything from the shadows in their attempts to build a new fleet and to resurrect Emperor Palpatine using Sith sorcery. Now, how Palpatine is resurrected and what Palpatine's relationship is to Snoke has not been completely explained yet. What the movie establishes is that at some point, the Emperor's voice is heard across the galaxy. Sometime between the events in The Last Jedi and when The Rise of Skywalker picks up, Kylo Ren began hearing voices that caused him to seek out what Snoke knew about Palpatine and Palpatine's contingency. From that point, the race to find and defeat Palpatine began. What Palpatine said was that his final order fleet would launch an attack in 16 hours and destroy any planet that stood against them. Now I'm going to hold off because I feel like I'm giving a bit of a history lesson. But the thing to take away from all of this is that although there is a coming war in the sequel trilogy and all of these new characters introduced to explore, the story has always been focused on how Palpatine is responsible for all of this really, really bad stuff. The Skywalker family has had to step up and deal with everything. This time around, a Skywalker is on this reverse path of Darth Vader, where they eventually are acting independently of a master or a teacher. Palpatine steps to the forefront saying that, well, everything that has happened has been part of my design, and you've been my pawn all along. And then a Palpatine has to step in to end the cycle for good with the help of the Skywalker family. Now, like I said in my spoiler-free review, I really enjoyed this movie. It goes very fast and it didn't get very deep into the philosophical stuff about the Force, not the way The Last Jedi did. But this movie was about fighting. There's a deep message here about acceptance as part of Rey's journey, but it's not something that's really shoved in your face, although, well, it kind of is. Now, I'm not sure if what I'm saying is coming across, but it'll make more sense when I can talk about Rey and her struggle with the Abyss in a future video. Now, I mentioned one of the things that I did not like about the movie in that I felt like Kylo Ren was never really challenged by Rey. Now, one of those reasons that it probably looked like he could have overpowered Rey at any point is because he actually is taunting Rey in their fights. Kylo Ren is trying to turn Rey to the dark side, and we saw on Pisana that the more Kylo Ren was able to push and frustrate Rey, she would lose her center and tap into her anger as a source of strength. Now, I felt like this was also a lesson that Rey had to learn, and that she couldn't fight her way out of every problem, even though that it worked for her in the previous two movies. In order for Rey to beat Palpatine, she was going to have to find an alternative way to defeat him. Now, this is my biggest complaint about The Rise of Skywalker and the sequel saga as a whole. Look, if you've been watching my channel for a few years, I want you to think back to every time I mentioned the Jedi Prince series. There are two videos that I can recall from 2016, is Rey the Jedi Princess and 3 Reasons That Snoke is a Fraud. Both of those videos reference the Jedi Prince series. And when people ask me about Rey being a Palpatine, well, I struck down the idea initially because of the Jedi Prince series. So if you have no idea what the Jedi Prince series is, it's like one of the first books in the expanded universe or the Legends canon. It takes place after the events in the original trilogy. Mon Mothma, Leia, and the leaders of the Rebel Alliance are put in the New Republic together at their base on Yavin 4. And it turns out that there's a hidden city on Yavin 4 that was built by the Jedi and is inhabited by the droids who were left there as caretakers. A young boy named Ken has been living in this lost Jedi city with no memory of his parents, but he's been aware of all of the galactic events because of his droid caretakers and all the computers there. So Luke Skywalker finds this kid in this lost Jedi city and sort of takes him on as his apprentice. The kid believes that he's related to Obi-Wan Kenobi because of his name, Ken. Now, it turns out that Ken's father is the secret son of Emperor Palpatine. His father married a princess who was a Jedi who left the order prior to the Jedi Purge. They went into hiding, but Ken's parents were eventually captured and taken to work the spice mines at Kessel. So Ken spends the last part of the story having to reconcile the fact that Palpatine is his grandfather, and Luke has to remind him that Vader was his father. Just because they have familial ties to the dark side does not mean that the same fate will befall them. There are other similarities in the stories, like a pretender attempting to take control of the remaining Imperial fleet. In the book, it was Trioculus claiming to be Palpatine's son and heir to the Empire. In this canon story, it was Gallius Rax, an orphan from Jakku who met Palpatine as a boy. He met his fate at Palpatine's observatory on Jakku during the Battle of Jakku. Grand Admiral Ray Sloane would lead the fleet into the unknown regions and form the First Order. At some point, Snoke appeared when he saved the fleet from wandering lost in the unknown regions. Snoke was unknowingly fulfilling the wishes of the Eternal Sith cult on Exegol, who were manipulating everything from the shadows all along. Now, in the Jedi Prince series, Trioculus would eventually have his power usurped by a member of Sith sorcerers who served under Palpatine. And it turned out that these Sith sorcerers actually did not have any ability to manipulate the dark side of the Force. They were also pretenders. Now, this stuff isn't in the Jedi Prince series, but if you'd like to read up on that stuff, it gets messy when actual Sith sorcerers show up. There's this dude named Chronal who had his name tossed around a lot in some Snoke theories back in 2016. And then eventually Palpatine is resurrected through the use of clone hosts and Sith alchemy. Now, like I said, it gets really messy, but if I swapped out the names and a few events here and there, You basically have the sequel saga. It was the Jedi Prince series and a few other stories from Legends all along. So my big complaint, now that we have the full saga, is that this story was already told, y'all. I mean, was this planned from the beginning, or did the way the story was put together, like a relay race, force J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio to have to scramble on the last leg and say, hey, y'all, what's a good story that we can slap a ribbon on, and give as many fans as possible something to smile about when they leave the theater? Me, I can't answer that question, and I'm not even going to try to answer it. I feel that many of the things JJ initially sought to establish were discarded by Rian Johnson when he took his deep dive into the relationship between Rey, Luke, and Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi. I mean, The Last Jedi was really Rey and Kylo Ren's movie. And yes, there was this whole other story arc that had to do with the Resistance being hunted by the First Order, and there was Finn's mission to Canto Bight to find this master codebreaker, but that mission was doomed to fail. Poe sending Finn and Rose on that mission was a straight up act of insubordination, but it was a necessary part of the film and the story to get Finn separated from everyone else, where he could make a conscious decision to be part of the story. Because up to that point, Finn was only there for Rey. The point still remains. The Last Jedi, hey, the movie was about Rey and Kylo Ren. The Rise of Skywalker didn't dismiss anything that Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. The Rise of Skywalker continued the story that was focused on Kylo Ren and Rey. Now, establishing Rey as the granddaughter of Palpatine after spending 2 movies presenting the idea that she's no one, that's not really a diss of Rian Johnson or The Last Jedi. I mean, first off, Kylo Ren making Rey admit that her parents are no one, it just goes to reinforce how the dark side has this guy's head shoved all the way up where the sun don't shine. I mean, the fact that Reylo fans saw this as romantic goes to show why people stay in toxic relationships. Toxic, abusive relationships. Kylo Ren told Rey that her identity is not worth investigating. She has no place in this story after Rey told Luke that she's trying to find her place in everything that's happening. Kylo Ren tells Rey that, hey, she'll have an identity and a place in the story at his side. He defines her meaning in all of this. So now we get to the final installment, and now Rey actually is someone. The dude who started all this mess, the ultimate evil in the galaxy, yeah, she's his granddaughter. And you know what's funny about this? See, at some point in the movie, Leia tells Rey not to be afraid of who she is. The question becomes, well, who is she? She's Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter, Darth Sidious. But she's not really Rey Palpatine. Rey had her identity taken from her by a Sith cultist who worshiped the Sith and Darth Sidious, or Emperor Palpatine. This one event in Rey's life, being left by her parents, her one weakness where she's always looked over her shoulder and been stuck in the past, her desire to find her family, she realizes that her blood family is responsible for her loss of family. Darth Sidious took Rey's identity from her, so it's up to her to decide her identity, and it's up to her to decide what her place will be in the story. So I told y'all, there actually is a deep message in this film, didn't I? But okay, so let's go back to that idea that I told y'all to push to the side. Rey is at a point where she can decide her own place in this story. She can choose her own identity. Rey spends this entire trilogy thinking about her family, where she came from, where does she belong, who are her people. She gets that answer, and she finds out that her only living relative is the cause of all of her pain and suffering. Her own grandfather didn't even value her life, her own identity. His plan was to transfer his essence into her body and to continue his plan to achieve immortality and unleash the full power of the dark side. I mean, Palpatine even told Rey that when Luke faced him, his father Anakin would come to save him, but Rey had no family to come and save her. So it was at that point, the struggles Rey faced previously, they no longer mattered. The burden of wanting to know who her people were, the pain of discovery when she learned the full truth, the anger when she realized Palpatine had her mother and her father killed just to use her for her power. Hey, remember when Han said that line to Ben about Snoke? Snoke is using you for your power. All these things that burdened her, she set down. She dropped that thing that was holding her back. She became no one, literally, and everyone at the same time. She was finally able to silence her mind in order to allow the previous Jedi to guide her in order to defeat Palpatine and the Sith Eternal Cult. And it's funny, in this part of the Star Wars story, there was a prophecy in place about a chosen one who would restore balance to the Force. The Jedi of the Clone Wars era interpreted the prophecy to mean that the chosen one would defeat the Sith. And Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, the prophecy is that through the chosen one, ultimate balance in the Force would be restored. Through the chosen one can be interpreted in a number of ways. Maybe it means through the family of the chosen one, meaning through his bloodline, or maybe even through an adopted family member. Rey, with the help of Han Solo, who initiated her into the mysteries as the wise old person. Luke and Leia, who actually trained her in the ways of the Jedi. And then Ben Solo, who gave up his life force for Rey to carry the teachings forward. Through the Skywalker family, they were able to defeat the ultimate evil in the galaxy that prompted the appearance of the Chosen One in the first place. So ultimate balance has been restored through the Skywalker's actions to raise up a Palpatine to defeat a Palpatine. And I think things got a bit heavy, but hey, this is my review of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I don't know if that's what you guys were looking for, but hey man, some of y'all didn't pay attention when I said this channel started back when I was a student at Vanderbilt Divinity School. I was studying to become a minister, and sometimes these videos turn into reflections. Sometimes they turn into teaching moments. Sometimes they even turn into preaching moments. Didn't I say at the start of the video that this was sort of like a Jedi teaching you about Star Wars? But anyway, hey, I would like to hear from all of you. Hey, what are your feelings after seeing The Rise of Skywalker? How do you feel about Rey being the last one standing after these 9 chapters of a story about bringing the Force back into balance due to a scheme set into motion by Palpatine? So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll be checking back to see what you all have to say. And if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and click that subscribe button so that you can take your first steps towards becoming an urban acolyte. Embark on the journey to become the hero of your own story and become a force for change in your community. If you want to support the channel, you can share this video with your friends who are interested in Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And hey, let them know that some of us love the movie, even if the cool thing these days is to hate on Star Wars. Also, be on the lookout for my review of Ip Man 4 over the next few days. This will be the last martial arts film that I cover on this channel, because I've started a new channel just about martial arts movies, and it's called Urban Acolyte Black Belt Reviews. For those of you who only care about Star Wars, yo, I do other stuff, like have you checked out my vlog, where I'll be posting most of the real life Jedi videos? I mean, it's cool if you only care about Star Wars, but hey, I gotta promote myself at all times because hey, no one else will. But anyway, that's all I got for this video. So y'all keep on breathing, and may the force of others be with you always.